All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie, and this is Denise, and you are watching What's the Takeaway? What's the Takeaway is a show just for you busy people. And we're going to tell you why you don't want to be busy anymore in a minute. But the idea is for you to have the freedom to remove things from your life and to find what matters the most. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. Oops, I got a little feedback. Sorry, Denise, go ahead.
That's okay.
Take
so
over.
Carrie used that word that we're trying to bust, that word of busy that we ourselves use. We catch ourselves all the time. I'm sure you all use it too. So we want to bust that word like right out of our vocabulary, because busy sounds like we're running around with, chasing our tails, and we're really not. Each one of us, each woman that is watching this is very productive, and we're very deliberate in what we do. So when you think of it the next time and someone says, "How are you?" say anything except busy, right? Say, "I'm getting so much done. I've, listened to the best podcast. I'm so productive this week." Like, say something positive. Get rid of busy. That's my little tirade, Carrie.
What's that?
That's my little tirade.
I love it. I love it. My favorite responses are now strong, which we learned from the Haitian refugees, which I hope you'll go back and watch that show. That was a fun show. Joyful, because that's my goal for this year, is to have a joyful year, and strong, joyful, and accomplished, which is what we're talking about today. How do we become people of accomplishment, and not just doing for the sake of doing, but to know your zone, know your purpose, why you're here, what it is that you were put on the planet to do, and to really live that to the fullest. We know when people really lock into that, that's when you see them shine. I read an article this morning about Elon Musk, and it was so interesting because he basically said he didn't like things, and instead of complaining about it, he found solutions. And I think that's a big part of what we're talking about today, right? We're trying to teach people. And I have to tell you, I took a deep breath when I heard this term when we were researching the show, knowledge hoarding. So we're going to explain what that means. We're going to take people from knowledge hoarding to really, really solid accomplishment, and in the world of information. So for those of you who are accomplished or professional or students or just lovers of learning, we know that information is something that we gravitate to. Our entire world is set up with institutions, with online schools, with brick and mortar schools, right? Our whole lives, right? From the minute we're born, almost, we see, sometimes people competing for the best preschool, right? So we're set up to be lifelong learners, which is a great thing. But we can actually move into something called knowledge hoarding. So Denise, you want to give me your take on what that means to you? What is knowledge hoarding, and why don't we want to do it?
You know what? It's so interesting. And as soon as you pointed that term out to me, I thought, oh, that applies to me. But I think I'm moving through it, because last week we talked about the 3 buckets.
Yes.
Right. And building our life and structuring our life so that everything we're doing has to fit in one of those buckets, or it has to go on a wish list. We'll talk about that a little later.
Yes, exactly.
So when you said knowledge hoarding, I thought, oh, I think I'm guilty. I do. I think I'm guilty. But then I thought, you know what? I am working through it. And so what it means to me is just reading voraciously and then not doing anything with what I'm learning. Like when we go to seminars or the conference, or when we join a seminar online, and anyone who knows me knows I take pictures, I write copious notes, right? Everything. But do I go back? Now, I will say sometimes I go back and I highlight things that stuck out to me. I will do that. But a lot of times I'm just off to the next thing. And so what is that, all that information that's not being utilized or dumped, doing?
And how many notebooks do we have?
Oh my gosh.
Our notebooks have notebooks, right? Our notebooks have notebooks. So if you're like us, don't worry, you're in good company. And we're going to give you 3 takeaways today, which is the whole purpose of our show, is to give you 3 ideas, 3 takeaways. You pick one, and your life gets better. So it's a really great, easy mathematical equation. So let's talk about today's takeaways. You want to take those? Want me to take those?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. So remember, we're talking about hoarding, right?
Knowledge. Right.
So knowledge hoarding, right? We're talking about knowledge hoarding and accomplishments in business and in life. And so
Right.
the first takeaway I love, it's if it's not relevant, it's rubbish. We don't really need it. We're going to go into detail all these. Number 2 is dump highlighting and only keep atomic notes. And number 3 is be a student of the links, not the information, right? So where the information actually links to other information, that it really sticks with us. And think about it to make the topic that it's really your own. You're making the topic your own in doing this.
Yeah,
so
that's where you move from student to master, right? Because we're going to be the
Perfect.
master of the links. I like that.
No, me too.
Right?
Absolutely. But they really have to be relevant, right, in our field, and we have to make it marketable, and we have to use it. So I love all 3 of these. This process and what we've done, you and I, when we do our research and we look into things, this really clarifies things for me.
Absolutely.
This is an area where I can get really caught up.
Yeah. And, not to beat ourselves up too much, but I think people who really love what they do for a living or are passionate about whatever bucket it is, for both of us, I know we have a family bucket. So of course you want to do and know the most you can to help your family and support your family. So the motivation is good. What we're trying to help you with is the process, right? So that you don't feel weighted down. And in fact, one of the things I researched or found out during the research, which is definitely going to stick with me, is that knowledge hoarding actually leads to weight gain or your inability to lose weight, which to me was like crazy. I think we have to do a whole show on that, but just keep that little thing in mind, like especially women over a certain age. I think sometimes it's harder and harder to lose weight, but also just think about it. When you were younger and you were in school, I don't know about you, but like I wanted to do well, but was I really voraciously consuming the information? Probably not. I was studying for the test or was trying to get to the next grade, whatever. But I think one of the beautiful things about being an adult and finding that area of your life where you're passionate about is that you now start to actually become a student of information where you really do want to consume it, to the fullest. You want to learn and you want to talk about it and you want to take notes about it. And that's great. The motivation is great. We're just going to give you a process that's going to make it much more effective in your life, right? So that you can actually then take it into your life and accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So let's talk a little bit about if it's not relevant, it's rubbish. So how do we determine whether it's relevant?
We go back to our buckets. We really look at our buckets. And so you guys, if you go back to last week's show, that's when we talked about buckets. And we really have a delineation. Otherwise, we're not deliberate in our actions. We're all over the place. We are scattered and we don't want to be scattered. And it's the same thing with the information that we pick up. I love that you talked about, I'm going to just go off this really quickly. I loved you talked about that link between weight gain and knowledge that's just cluttering our brain, because it's very similar. And we talked about this earlier. It's very similar to the feng shui practice, that if your home or your office is cluttered, your brain is cluttered too. So you're really not doing yourself any service.
Right.
So I do like this. So what do you talk about? I always say, even if you don't enjoy a book, if you're not enjoying a book, if it's not making sense to you, if there's no reason, then you know what? Dump it. Even if you're in a book club, still go out to the meeting. That's fun. You're in your community, you're having fun. And you can tell them, I really didn't like it. And then maybe they'll say something that'll spark something and you go, oh, maybe I'll revisit, or maybe not, because it doesn't fit in your buckets. Right. So you don't necessarily have to do that. So I do like that. If you identify that it's not serving you, release it lovingly.
Right. I love that. Yeah, we learned that with the Win-Win Women Network. Just release it lovingly. Now, we may find that our buckets change in life, right? And so the fact that that book or that lecture or that class came into our life, maybe it's a not now. So what can we do with it other than just like saying, I can't deal with you right now?
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways to handle that, right?
Okay.
Because and not in another notebook.
No.
No more notebooks, guys. I'm telling you, I'm the queen of notebooks. No more notebooks. You can do that really easily. You
I
can
love
make
my
a wish
notebook.
list. I know, Carrie, I'm right there with
And
you.
you gave me this one, so it's very special.
Well, that one you can keep
Okay.
until it no longer serves a purpose.
Right.
And then you have my,
Lovingly release it.
yes, have my blessings on that. But you can make a beautiful wish list in Amazon, right? Just keep them in your wish list. Look, and someone in your family might go on and say, oh, look what they have. And maybe it'll show up on your doorstep unbeknownst to you, but not right now, because you really can't get into it right now. And we did even more research, and Kindle has also a place where you can put a list of books that someday you want to read. So it's not like it's going to go out of your mind or you're going to, lose track of it. It's not, but you don't have to have it here. You don't have to have it on your bookshelf, and you don't have to have it here.
Right.
Right. It just doesn't need to be.
And
So
I think electronically, I even do this on YouTube now. So when I find something, I'm a big fan of YouTube. I love YouTube. That's one of the reasons why we picked it as a platform. But I love the fact that I can categorize some of the podcasts or the programs that I really enjoy listening to. So for example, if you like our show, What's the Takeaway? You could actually, create a folder on YouTube that's called like life improvement tricks or my favorite podcasts, or even just what's the takeaway. And if one of these shows really resonates with you, you can actually save it to a list in YouTube. Did you know that?
I did not know that, but that makes sense.
And it's really fun too, because then sometimes I want to share this with somebody else, right? Like I'll say, oh, I watched this great YouTube show, and where is it? Oh, well, it's in my folder. So I can go to that folder. And if you find the folders getting too big, you can just break them into subfolders, right? It could be favorite music. It could be favorite movies. I mean, I even started a folder for comedy skits because sometimes life gets a little overwhelming and I just want 2 minutes of laughter. So I'll just go into my folder. I play something really funny, and
Yeah.
it's a good way for me to like connect with my kids too. So anyway,
I
there's
think
lots of
I think
ways to
that's
organize that.
awesome. I honestly think that's awesome. And you know what I was just thinking too, when you're reading books, the books that you do want to read and you are getting something from, they always name other authors.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
this would be a really great way to put those books, because I have a list in a notebook of those books. But
But
this
where's
way
the notebook, right? Yeah. Who
I
knows?
can just I write on the spine, I write on the back like it's cookie. But this is so much simpler and so much more efficient. And so highly recommend saving it on Amazon or your Kindle.
Yeah, and I do want to step in. Unlike most of our shows where all the three takeaways are pretty equal in their application, today our show is really going to be a progression takeaway show. So I want you to know that you may be listening to this and say to yourself, I do that already. I have my 3 buckets. I'm very discerning about information that I take in, and I do have a wish list. So if you've done that already, then you may want to go on to our takeaway number 2.
Right, which is really making just regular notes into atomic notes. Carrie, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so I'm a teacher, and I have to say one of the things that really hurts my heart is when I have a student who really doesn't know how to take notes. And I always say you have to start with the end in mind, right? So what is it we're trying to get out of this lecture, out of this book? What is the author trying to write about? I've even said to students, you know what, go look up on YouTube the author speaking, and you'll understand his life's work and what his purpose is, right? And so when you read the book, you have a greater appreciation for the person speaking. But the same thing applies when you're going to a lecture or yeah, I guess books, lectures, this is really where this information applies. So what do we do? I think the average person has been taught to either highlight or, those list of notes we used to do, like you have this big topic and then you break it into smaller topics and then smaller topics, right? Or you have note cards and you flip through all your note cards. And then who knows where your note cards go, right? It's just like they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Instead, what you can do is do what they call atomic note taking. So actually sit and listen to the lecture. Now, if you're someone who has a hard time focusing, I would recommend that you actually record the lecture. So if you need to go back, you can go back. If you're someone who has a hard time focusing when you're reading, that's okay. You're going to like read a chapter or maybe read 4 pages, and then you're going to stop and you're going to step back and you're going to say, what did I get out of that? Like actually take a minute and ask yourself, what was the author saying to me? Because there was something probably that you read that popped out at you. And so for a student, right, whatever they're reading, their author is trying to tell them something, very factual, probably. But for us in a professional world, you may be trying to think of a theme or a thesis or a process, right? So just taking an atomic note on that process, which could be a quote, or it could be a summary in your own words of what you got from that book. And if it's something that's really important, you can go back and do a new atomic note or a new summary. But you know what? The rest of the lecture, I hate to say this, but the rest of the lecture and the rest of the book isn't for you right now. So it goes away. That's what you're taking away. That's what you're taking away.
No, I agree. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. I think if we read, because this is something I always do, but it was just reiterated to me in researching this. Look at the index.
Excellent.
From the index, we know almost immediately what's going to jump out at us. And if a book has a summary, read the summary, right? Look what they're highlighting, look what they're bolding and drawing your attention to. And then don't take notes right away. Read a section or read the chapter. And to Carrie's point, summarize what you got out of it, because it applies to what you're looking for and how it's going to build on what you're building, because that's what's really important. Sometimes the authors, we align with the author exactly. It's why we find the book at that time. It's why we pick it up. But sometimes an author will say something and it'll trigger something else in you and you go, oh, that is where I need to be, right? And so when you're looking at these, don't highlight every word, because what you're going to end up doing as you're reading is you're going to just keep highlighting
everything, especially if you love the author. It's like, wow, this is brilliant. That's brilliant. And this is brilliant. I got to remember this. And
yeah, but it's not going to benefit you in the long run, right? So there's a great, and we'll talk about this later too. Go take a break. Right? Ruminate, let it sink in. So go for a walk, go exercise, go do anything, but let it sink in. It's really brilliant. The other thing I do when I'm reading, and I just want to share this with people, because there are books that I read multiple times. I actually, if I highlight or underline something, I date when I do it.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I do. I love that. Because I just recently read with a book group, Napoleon Hill again. And it was fascinating to me to see what stood out to me this time that didn't last, or vice versa. And I just thought that was really cool, but it's where we are. We progress as people. So the information that we read stands out sometimes, and other times you're like, yeah, I know that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And then those atomic notes, what you're going to find is they link to each other, right? Like they actually, because you're focused on the 3 buckets, when you read something that's so important, right? It's an atom. And so what you have to think of, what do atoms do? Atoms form together to create molecules, right? And so the molecules then become the matter, right? The matter is at the heart of what you're trying to actually construct. So it may be an atomic note from one author. It may be a couple of atomic notes from a lecture. It could even be your own thought on the thing, right? That could be its own atomic note, but now you have a molecule, right? And then you have multiple molecules, because within any subject, you might have different subsets. You don't want to get too in the weeds with this, but like with your kids, let's just say, we both have adult children. Maybe they're looking for their first home, and that's something you really want to help them with. Well, one aspect could be like how to actually buy a piece of real estate that's very, of good value and good resale value, right? So that could be one molecule of your bucket. And then another molecule might be something like decorating on a dime, right? Because they're just getting their first home, right? And then the next molecule, might be something like all of the fun things to do in the area. And then you've actually completed a whole bucket for them, right? So you can take that bucket and give it to them. And now you've actually created something of value to another person because it's been curated and it's been linked and it has order and it has purpose. And that's really what makes us experts, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise we're just spewing information.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do we want to add anything else to that
Well,
takeaway?
that's part of the 3, right? Be a student of the links, not the information. And one of the things that I read, the gentleman's name was Thomas Frank, and I saw him on YouTube, and he was fascinating. But what he was saying is, if you need to learn about something, it's not really interesting you, like you've got a book and you're like, oh, I don't know, it's kind of dry, it's not hitting me, then go link something else to it, a similar, the same subject, but in a different way. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's a YouTube, maybe it's one of the examples I thought of is if you're studying like American artists, then go to the National Gallery of Art and see, like in person, see those artists and their work.
Amazing.
And it's going to be so much more powerful, and you're going to hold on to that information so much easier than if you're trying to remember dates and artists' names and their painting. No.
Yeah.
But it makes it come alive. And if it comes alive, and because you've linked all these different great ways of learning from different people, the same subject, as you said before, you just get much more dynamic in knowing what that is about and how to apply it to your life or your business.
Yeah. And I think the fun thing about that is that's when you get to actually graduate. So you graduate from being a student of the information, right? Because you actually know how to be a student of information instead of being a hoarder of information or consumer of information, or a sifter of information. For some people, just information flowing at them, it's just sifting. It's just going in one ear and out the other. They're mindlessly scrolling on the internet. Hours and hours go by and you're like, what did I just do with that time? And I'll never get it back. Right. Mm-hmm. So we want to be students of the information. We want it to stick. We want it to be meaningful to our lives, which then turns us into masters, right? We become masters of the links. Like if you're thinking of those atomic notes, right? Or those molecules, you're mastering them because you've actually put those together. That's your work. Even if it's somebody else's ideas, even if it's something that was historical from years and years ago, your thoughts on that subject, your way of presenting it is new and original. And so that's what mastery is about, right? To really take a deep dive into one of your 3 buckets in a way that's really meaningful to someone else. And then you can bring that and apply it into the world, which is where accomplishment comes in. I think this is so exciting because you do get to walk away from all the clutter and the things that are holding you back, right? If I had closed my eyes, I can kind of see myself in a room with stacks of information and multiple screens on at one time, and the radio's on over here, and my cell phone's got like a podcast ready to play, and it's a little bit like, where do I go? So I think get rid of all that.
And we don't need that. So in the last minute, I love this topic. I do, because I am an information junkie, but I do love it. But Carrie and I both find that one of the best ways we know to stay alert and be open to ideas and be creative is actually to diffuse while we are reading, or while we're looking over our notes, or even while we're in, a seminar or a class. And so one of our absolute favorite oils to do that is Northern Escape. And I'm just going to read you the beautiful oils in this because there are so many. There's black spruce, Siberian fir, frankincense, kanunga, balsam, lavandin, cedarwood, hinoki, cypress, nutka, and clove. That is a gorgeous blend. And there are a couple of different reasons why we pick this. One is Carrie's favorite. Do you want to talk about it?
Do I want to talk about why it's my favorite?
Favorite? Yeah, the negative.
Oh yeah. So in my wildest dreams, I would be able to walk through the woods every day and enjoy the negative ions that are given off by the trees and the essential oils. But since I can't, I have Northern Escape and I like to diffuse it right next to me and I smell the trees and it clears my mind of all of the positive electronic pollution, right? Because all of these screens give off pollution and we have to live with them, but we don't have to live with the negativity. So
No,
just get out that
no.
Northern Escape and diffuse, diffuse, diffuse.
And actually, it is great to open your mind and to really think more clearly. So it goes along with the limbic system and how we take in information. So it's a beautiful way to add to your understanding of what you're consuming.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I think that's it for today, but I love that topic. I do.
I know. I think we could probably talk a little bit more about this because we're so passionate about it. But remember, these takeaways are progressive. So start with figuring out what's relevant, not rubbish. And then the second one is to create your atomic notes instead of your regular notes. And then your third one is really to be the master of the links instead of the student of the information. And I think we're all going to see a lot of great things happening in the world because of this.
I think that's wonderful, Carrie. I love this topic. Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
We're headed over to Win Win Women Network. If you want to join us there, you can. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on YouTube. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.